What was the most f***ed up thing you saw at your school? Story 1. Some kids were punching a mason jar lid that we used to seal a jar with some bug in it. When the teachers saw that and saw that they have small scratches on their knuckles, she proceeded to tell them that the bug in the jar and the lid were poisonous and they will die very soon since they drew blood punching the lid. We were maybe 10 at the time, and she made them write goodbye notes to their parents. They also had to make goodbye speeches to the class. We were all tripping because we believed her too. It was wild. Story 2. Not saw it, but I did experience the aftermath. A kid at our school died once while out on a school camp. They were way out in the Australian outback. The teachers made barbecue for the kids, and one of the boys, for some reason, ate the food, kebabs, without asking what was in them, even though his parents had filled out his permission form indicating clearly that he had food allergies. Long story short, hardcore anaphylaxis. His throat swelled up, fell to the ground, foaming. The school nurse stabbed him with every single EpiPen they had in the medical kit, but nothing happened. Picked him up, threw him in the van, and sped out of the campsite at top speed down the road. They were so far out in the middle of nowhere that there was no phone reception. Can't do anything, can't call for an ambulance or helicopter. They literally couldn't do anything. Finally got to the nearest town and called emergency services. The helicopter arrived, loaded the kid onto it, started treatment, and flew straight back to town. Never made it. He died before chopper even landed. I was working at the school at the time. I had a job offered by the school to graduates, which I accepted, and found out all the details from the school nurse. Whoa, that's a truly heartbreaking story. It's a tragic reminder that even with all the precautions in place, accidents can still happen. I can't imagine the pain and guilt the teachers, the school nurse, and everyone else involved must have felt. In these types of situations, it's crucial to learn from the tragedy and take steps to ensure something like this never happens again. My deepest condolences to the boy's family and friends. Story 3. A new kid at our school grabbed the art teacher's scissors and threw them over a dividing wall when the teacher left the room. They hit some girl in a different art class on the other side, and one of the blades went through her cheek. We were held after class until he finally confessed, and we saw the police at school later. He had been at our school for about a week, and we never saw him again after that day. Story 4. When I was in high school, 2 fights made national news because they were so bad. I only saw them with my eyes. There was a fight, and the school cop tried stopping the fight, and the girl broke the cop's leg. I watched it happen. The other that I didn't physically see take place, these 2 dudes were fighting over a girl, and the big dude punched the other kid so hard he had a freaking seizure. During high school, it was forbidden to roam in the hallways during classes. Like, the hallways were always completely empty during classes. At one point, piles of would start to appear behind doors in the hallway from time to time. Everyone thought a student was bringing an animal into the high school or something, but it was pretty freaking weird. It lasted for like a month. The school started asking the janitors to patrol the hallways during classes. They didn't find anything, and the shit would still appear. After a moment, the mystery was solved when a group of girls who were skipping class witnessed one of the students crouching with his pants completely taken off and behind one of the doors in the hallway. The guy was one of the weirdest kids in school and got expelled afterwards. Whoa, those are some wild stories from your high school days. The first one with the fights just goes to show how things can spiral out of control when tensions are high. It's really unfortunate that the school cop got injured in the process, but it also highlights the need for better conflict resolution and violence prevention programs in schools. Seeing someone have a seizure due to a fight must have been a truly shocking and scary experience. As for the second story, that's definitely one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard happening in a school. It's hard to imagine what could have motivated that student to do something so strange and unsanitary. I'm glad the janitors and the school staff were able to put an end to it, though. Story 5. In 1981, I was in grade 4, and we had a sadistic teacher. She'd beat us for any reason. The worst I saw was 2 incidents. The first was when she canned a boy on his palm. She thrashed his hand until the skin broke and blood gushed out. The second was when she called a boy up to the blackboard to solve a maths problem. The poor boy was so terrified, he froze. She grabbed him by the neck and smashed his head against the blackboard several times. She regularly did this to him, and eventually, He ended up in the hospital with a serious concussion. She taught there for many years and no one ever did anything about her. This was in South Africa, and back then teachers were considered untouchable by most parents. If you come home complaining that a teacher hit you, you'd probably get another thrashing because the teacher was always right. She's dead by now, and I hope she's burning in the deepest reaches of Story 6. This seriously terrible girl who always smelled bad and screamed at people that she was a witch and she'd curse you. She kept bugging my friend to sell her some funny leaves, and he told her no a whole bunch of times. Unfortunately, about a week before the school year ended, he needed money for something and finally agreed. She immediately went to the administration, who called the police, and he was both expelled and ended up in juvie. As far as I know, she's still an insufferable piece of trash almost 30 years later. Story 7. Once saw a teacher fully dump out a teenage girl's bag because he was convinced she stole one of his pens, exposing her pads, tampons, phone, hairbrush, etc., and also her diary, which some random kid picked up and started reading out loud while laughing. Exposing her life at home, where her mom and dad are mentally abusive towards her. All the kids made fun of her, and the teacher was just screaming at her about a freaking pen. She ran out, and about 20 minutes later, the teacher found the pen under his papers. She transferred schools afterwards, and nothing happened to the teacher for doing this. It's incredibly sad that the girl had her personal life exposed in such a cruel way. And it's even worse that her fellow students took advantage of her vulnerability. The teacher's negligence and the student's behavior are both examples of how toxic environments can be created within schools. This situation could have been handled in a much more respectful and discreet manner. Story 8. I'll never forget the day that everything changed at school. The day that remains seared into my memory like an unshakable nightmare. It was a day that started like any other, but took a turn for the worse in the blink of an eye. It was a chilly Tuesday morning in November, and I was trudging through the hallway to my first class of the day, half asleep and dreading the long day ahead. As I turned the corner, I noticed a large crowd gathered near the gymnasium entrance. Students were huddled together, whispering frantically and pointing towards the gym doors. Curiosity piqued. I pushed my way through the throng of students to get a closer look. My heart raced as I neared the front, and I felt my stomach drop when I finally laid eyes on the source of the commotion. A crimson liquid, dark and thick, was seeping out from beneath the gym doors. Hushed whispers turned to panicked cries as the crowd began to piece together the scene before them. The gymnasium was locked, and no one knew what was happening inside. The sight of the mysterious red liquid was enough to send chills down my spine, and I knew something was very wrong. The gym teacher, Mr. Thompson, appeared out of nowhere, pushing through the crowd with the fierce determination. He fumbled with the keys, trying to unlock the door, his hands shaking as if he could sense the impending doom. When the door finally swung open, the sight that greeted us was beyond anything I could have imagined. The once pristine gymnasium was now a scary scene of chaos and destruction. Blood-soaked paper airplanes were everywhere around the room. And the most horrifying sight of all was the row of dismembered mannequins, their detached limbs scattered through the room like a twisted art installation. A hush fell over the crowd as the realization set in. Someone had staged this gruesome spectacle as a sick joke. It was the most fucked up thing any of us had ever seen. And it was a day that would haunt us for the rest of our lives. In the weeks that followed, the school was consumed by an atmosphere of fear and suspicion. No one knew who was responsible for the twisted scene, but one thing was for sure, our lives would never be the same. The innocence of our high school experience had been shattered, replaced with the chilling reminder of just how twisted the human mind could be. Story 9. It was an unassuming day during my freshman year of high school when I experienced something I'll never forget. The small, tight-knit community where I lived had always felt safe and secure, but that illusion was about to be shattered. Lunchtime was always a chaotic affair, with students rushing to grab their meals and find a place to sit. That day, I was sitting with my friends near the large windows that looked out onto the courtyard. We were laughing and joking, completely unaware of the events about to unfold. Suddenly, we hear a commotion from the other side of the cafeteria. A group of students had gathered around a table, and it was clear that something was going on. Curiosity piqued, we left our seats and headed over to see what was happening. As we got closer, we saw a girl named Emily who was always quiet and kept to herself. She was standing on top of the table, clutching a small, tattered notebook. Her eyes were filled with a strange mix of determination and terror, as if she was both eager and afraid to share what she held in her hands. Without any warning or introduction, Emily began to read aloud from her notebook. Her voice was shaky at first, but it grew stronger and more confident with each word. She spoke of her struggles with depression and the relentless bullying she had endured. She shared her darkest thoughts and her most painful memories, laying her soul bare for everyone to see. The cafeteria fell silent, every eye fixed on Emily as she continued to read. Her words resonated with many of us, and I could see tears streaming down the faces of some of my classmates. For the first time, we saw Emily not as the quiet girl who never spoke, but as a human being with a story to tell. A story that was all too familiar to some of us. When Emily finished reading, she closed her notebook and stared at the crowd with a newfound sense of courage. The room remained silent for a moment before erupting into applause. We had all borne witness to an act of incredible bravery, and it was a moment that would change our school for the better. In the days that followed, students began to open up about their own struggles, inspired by Emily's courage. Conversations around mental health and bullying became more prevalent, and our school community slowly grew stronger and more supportive. It was a turning point for all of us, and a reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon against darkness is the courage to share our own stories. It's amazing how one person's courage can create a ripple effect that brings about positive change within an entire community. Emily's bravery is sharing her deeply personal experiences with depression and bullying open the door for others to do the same, fostering a more supportive and understanding environment at the school. What's particularly striking about this story is the transformation of the students' perception of Emily. By sharing her struggles, she showed everyone that she was more than just the quiet girl. It's a reminder to all of us not to judge people based on their outward appearances or behaviors, as we never truly know what they might be going through. Story 10. When I was a senior in high school, they made the seniors and freshmen have lunch together. The only acceptable times to use the restrooms were during breakfast and lunch. So naturally, the bathrooms were packed full and had long lines. I knew something was off when there was no line to the bathroom, but I could hear a commotion inside the bathroom. As I opened the door to go in, I heard a scream and then watched something smack into the wall with a sickening squish sound. No sooner than I could process what I had just seen, another one hit the wall. It was shit. The freshman was having a fight like monkeys. After that, the bathrooms were only available during breakfast under supervision in groups. Glad I was a senior that year. Number 11. When I was a teacher years ago, I had a 4th grade student who was an absolute nightmare, hitting other kids, throwing all the stuff from his desk all over the room for no reason, cussing out teachers, etc. I hated that kid, but I tried to keep in mind that it wasn't the kid's fault. Society had failed him. He had no dad, his mom was an alcoholic, and he lived in poverty fending for himself. Though I'm not religious, I would say a fucking thank you Jesus prayer on the days he didn't come to school. Those actually were pretty rare. I suspect he usually managed to get himself on the bus and get to school because it was the only place he got any food. After a while, I was somehow able to get his mom to come in for a conference to talk about the situation. She came in drunk and started yelling at me that I was a dumb motherfucker who was picking on her son. This went on until the principal came in and pulled her by the arm out of the room. So the days went along. One day after school, I was straightening up the room and noticed there was some writing on one of the books I had set up as a part of a little classroom library. This was a poor school district. There weren't a lot of books available to the kids, so I brought in a bunch of my own favorite childhood books, Charlotte's Web, the Narnia books, etc. I started looking through them and saw that the awful kid, I easily recognized his writing, had written you in pen on a bunch of pages in multiple books. I had a bit of a meltdown that evening, but the days went on. One day, the kid got angry about something and started picking up chairs and hurling them across the room. He wouldn't stop no matter what I said, and he almost hit a girl in the head with a chair. So I grabbed him by the arm and basically started dragging him down to the school office. The whole time, he's trying to hit me in the nuts and screaming that I can't touch him. He's going to sue me, blah blah blah. We were on second floor and we had to go down a flight of stairs to get to the office. Right as we were almost to the steps, he managed through his flailing to hit me in the crotch. Oh man, I'll be honest. I came so close to ruining my life right then because I just about chucked that kid down the stairs. It was like 20 steps too. We both would have been royally I didn't do it though. Instead, about a week later, I had a panic attack driving home from school. I thought I for sure was having a heart attack and went to the hospital in an ambulance and everything. I did manage to finish the school year after that though, and then quit. So here's the f***ed up thing. I went on to different cities to teach in rich suburban schools where I made more money and had a way easier time of it. And you know how some kids will give gifts to the teacher at the end of the school? I got pretty extravagant gifts sometimes from the kids in suburbia. I once received a $100 Best Buy gift card. One time, a rich stay-at-home mom sewed or knitted a super nice blanket of my favorite sports team. Those were all great, but were forgotten about pretty quickly. I don't teach anymore, but the one gift I ever received from a student that I still have is a chipped and broken little ceramic tiger. That kid that I almost chucked down the stairs gave it to me on the last day of school. He put it in my hand without saying anything and walked away. Please leave your story down below in the comments. I would absolutely love to make a video about them in the future. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, Tony's fam, peace out.